Have you ever had that feeling like society's just teetering on the edge of something huge, a really big shift? We hear that phrase, tipping point, quite a bit, right? Usually talking economics, maybe politics.
Yeah, policy changes reaching a critical point.
Exactly. But what if? What if it applies to something way more fundamental, like human consciousness itself?
That's a really interesting angle because a tipping point, well, it suggests something irreversible, doesn't it? A moment where all these smaller changes suddenly add up to this massive transformation.
Right.
And the material we're looking at today, it's not just talking about small tweaks to how things are. It's suggesting a really deep, almost evolutionary shift in awareness that could, fundamentally change everything.
Totally. So today, we're diving deep into this really fascinating perspective. It comes from a channeling session by Kryon.
Okay.
Now, for anyone not familiar, Kryon is described as a spiritual entity channeled through a person offering insights on, human evolution, consciousness, that sort of thing. Our goal here in this deep dive, it isn't really about validating the source itself, but more about unpacking the ideas, these really powerful ideas about change.
Gotcha.
And this specific session, it suggests that the usual ways change happens in society. The patterns we've seen for centuries, they're actually breaking down.
So not just another cycle?
No, that's the claim.
Huh.
It's supposedly unprecedented, driven by a new generation, and importantly, powered by communication tools that they didn't exist before.
Okay. That's a key difference right there.
Yeah. So our mission today is to explore what this tipping point idea really means according to the source, compare it to those historical cycles, and figure out what it might imply for our systems. And, ultimately for you listening. Let's unpack this.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Well, to really get what might be happening now, the source says we need to look back first. It paints this really stark contrast between what has been a norm for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years, apparently. And what it suggests is unfolding right now.
Yeah.
So for ages, it seems, young people, as they hit their late teens, early 20s, they consistently show this drive.
Yeah, that idealism.
Right. That urge for different ways of doing things. They want to change the world. They want their voices heard. They often see completely new ways to tackle old problems. And this impulse, it pretty predictably pops up in higher education settings, doesn't it? That's kind of where ideas clash and build momentum.
It's definitely a recurring theme in history, isn't it? The source really highlights this consistent pattern. Young adults, especially in that sort of intellectual hotbed of universities, they tend to get organized.
Yeah.
They get this really sharp eye for what they see as wrong or, opposed to the system of their time. And they push back hard with a lot of energy. It's almost like this universal phase, this youthful idealism hitting up against the established norms, the power structures.
Right.
But what's really fascinating here and kind of central to the source's whole argument is how consistently this has happened without really changing the fundamental structures they were challenging.
Like a wave crashing on a rock.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. Lots of noise, lots of spray, but ultimately the rock's still there.
And this isn't just, the last 50 years or something. The source gives this really interesting historical tidbit that kind of brought it home for me.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, if you go back to the 1920s, Western Europe, especially in some big cities, the political powers back then, they would actually move away from the colleges when they had important meetings.
Get out of earshot.
Yeah, because they knew if they stayed too close, there'd be trouble there. They knew the young people objected to just about everything.
Sounds familiar.
Right. They didn't like the government, didn't like the economic systems. They had their own, often pretty radical, ideas about how things should run. It was this sort of simmering rebellion in those academic halls.
It's a powerful echo, isn't it? That same energy, that desire for big change, it just keeps popping up in different times. And connecting that to more recent history, the source specifically points to the 60s revolution. That's probably a more relatable example for many of us, that same pattern of youthful idealism pushing back.
Absolutely.
It really felt back then like it was unstoppable.
And what a time that was. I mean, my own partner, as the source happens to mention, was actually part of it. Right in the thick of that generational shift.
Wow.
The 60s, I mean, huge protests, right, about the Vietnam War, civil rights, all those rigid social norms that just felt suffocating to a new generation.
Yeah, real rejection of the status quo.
Totally. And you had these incredible, unique festivals like Woodstock. They weren't just concerts. They were like huge temporary experiments in living differently, rejecting mainstream values.
Building an alternative.
Yeah. There was this deep desire among young people to literally drop out of society, not even be part of it, to push for something truly better, a whole different reality. Movements built around peace, love, radical freedom. It really felt then like the world was about to change fundamentally, like the old ways were done for.
And this is exactly where that historical pattern shows its, well, surprising and often, frankly, disappointing outcome. The source tells us, pretty bluntly, that despite all that energy, all that protest, all that powerful idealism, nothing really truly happened with that.
Oof. That's harsh.
It is harsh, yeah. But it points to a deeper, maybe more sobering truth about these cycles, the structures, the core systems. They just stayed stubbornly resistant.
It's almost crushing when you look at it that way, isn't it? Because what happens, the young people, full of these ideals, they grow up. They become part of an existing system that is fundamentally still the same.
The daily grind kicks in.
Right. They graduate, they get jobs, start families, face economic pressures, and then slowly, often without even noticing, they get absorbed into the system that they objected to.
Yeah.
It's like the system has this incredible gravity, this inertia that just pulls even his biggest critics back into the fold eventually.
And the source gives a really stark, almost ironic example of this absorption. It points out that even the most vocal, the leaders of those kinds of movements back then, they fit in.
Really?
Yeah. Some of them, unbelievably, ended up becoming stockbrokers in the very systems that they objected to.
Wow. Talk about irony.
Exactly. The very financial structures they wanted to tear down. It just highlights the sheer resilience of what the source calls this very old energy.
Yeah.
It's historically pushed back incredibly hard, maintained the status quo, and stopped any real shifts in consciousness or lasting systemic change.
So the system just adapts, co-ops, and survives.
That seems to be the historical pattern, yeah. It's got this amazing ability to persist.
Okay, so this begs the question then. What are these systems? The ones that have been so incredibly resistant to change historically. What are these core structures that, according to the source, have just not moved despite generations of idealists trying?
Well, the source is pretty direct about naming them, highlighting how fundamental they are to society. First up, it mentions banking.
Okay.
Specifically, the way banks make their money, the way they work with the public. So the core mechanics of finance, debt, how capital works, things that haven't really changed much for ages despite crises and outrage.
Right, got it. What else?
Then there's schooling, our education systems, broadly speaking.
Oh, yeah.
Think about the model, right? Often described as a factory model, standardized tests, rote learning, preparing kids for the existing economy, maybe not fostering truly independent critical thinking.
Fits the mold.
And finally, government itself. The big political bureaucratic structures that handle laws, order, resources.
Not a whole apparatus.
Exactly. And the source is really clear. These systems simply doesn't change. It calls them systemic parts of a system that remain the same.
Right.
And that observation is absolutely crucial because that's what sets up the big distinction for what the source calls the coming tipping point. It's arguing that what's happening now isn't just another wave of protests that'll fizzle out. It's something different, something that will finally break this old pattern of absorption and inertia.
That is a huge distinction. And it really highlights why this deep dive feels so relevant, you know? Because if we keep seeing these cycles of rebellion just dissolving, then a real tipping point has to be something else entirely.
Absolutely. It can't just be more of the same. Otherwise, well, it's not a tipping point, is it?
Right.
And the source clarifies this. It says this tipping point it's talking about is not your typical countrywide revolution, not the kind where, the majority of people rise up and overthrow the government.
Okay, so not pitchforks and torches.
Exactly. Those are often chaotic, violent, and frequently just replace one old system with another that might look different on the surface, but keep similar power dynamics underneath. This proposed shift is apparently much more subtle, but potentially way more profound and lasting in its effects.
And that's where the focus really narrows, isn't it? It's specifically about the influence of the very young, the ones who are just adults in their 20s, in those first years in the education, when they get together and decide things are dysfunctional.
Yeah, that specific group.
It's not the whole population storming the gates. It's this particular cohort with this unique perspective coming together around a shared sense of what's broken. And maybe, more importantly, a shared vision for what could replace it.
A quieter transformation, more systemic.
Exactly.
And the mechanism for change that the source describes is also pretty unique. It moves beyond just protest or revolution in the traditional sense.
How so?
It says the tipping point will be where there's so much energy in new kinds of thinking that it becomes one thing that starts to create new systems around the old ones, to infiltrate with new ideas, so that the old ideas are obsolete and seen as obsolete, seen actually as dysfunctional.
Okay, hang on. So not tearing down, but building around, infiltrating, making the old stuff irrelevant.
Precisely. That's the core insight. It's not about destroying the old with force. It's about making it irrelevant by building something so much better, so much more functional, so appealing, so aligned with well-being, that the old ways just fade away.
Like getting a smartphone when you still have a rotary phone.
Yeah.
You don't smash the rotary phone, you just stop using it because something vastly better exists.
That's a perfect analogy. You don't crash the old system, you just evolve past it. It becomes clunky, inefficient, unusable by comparison. People naturally move towards what works better.
Right, so it's not a head-on collision. It's like building a better highway next to the old bumpy road. People just start taking the new highway.
Exactly. You innovate new solutions, new frameworks, new pathways that make the old, rigid ways seem unnecessary, undesirable.
You don't have to destroy something if you build something better that everyone prefers. That works more compassionately, more effectively.
It's a fundamentally different approach to change. It relies on innovation, attraction, not force.
Okay.
And this isn't just happening randomly, according to the source. It's part of a much bigger picture, a cosmic shift, you might say. The source broadens the view, saying this planet is going through a major shift, and the shift is in consciousness. This big global shift in human awareness is like the underlying current, the energetic foundation for why this tipping point with young people can actually happen now.
So it's the context that makes this time different from the 60s or the 20s.
That's the idea. It provides the reason why this time the pattern of absorption can finally be broken.
Now I can almost hear some listeners thinking, okay, hold on, a planetary shift in consciousness? That sounds a bit out there, a bit abstract.
It's a big claim.
Yeah, and the source actually anticipates that skepticism. It acknowledges some may roll your eyes and say, yeah, sure.
Which is understandable.
Totally. It's a natural reaction, especially when you turn on the news and all you see is conflict, division. It feels like things are getting worse, not better.
And this is where the source offers a really crucial counterpoint. It explains why our daily perception might be skewed, why the constant bad news might actually be a kind of misdirection.
How so?
It argues that what we mostly see in the media, what grabs headlines, is the old energy in its worst-case scenarios doing the same things it always did.
The drama sells.
Right. The conflict, the dysfunction, the same old patterns of greed and power.
Right.
That's what gets reported because it's loud, familiar, and sensational.
Okay.
The implication is that this deeper, more fundamental shift is happening more quietly. Under the hood, as the source puts it, or under the bonnet, depending where you are. A subtle but powerful transformation that we're not being actually informed about through mainstream channels. This is the quiet revolution, the unseen current that makes this time potentially different.
Okay, so it's happening behind the scenes, away from the spotlight.
That's the perspective offered, yes. Creating the conditions for a genuine tipping point, unlike those past cycles that ultimately fizzled out.
So if this shift is happening under the hood, who or what is actually driving it? Especially when we talk about this tipping point among young people. This brings us to a concept the source introduces, the Indigos. This might be new for some listeners, or maybe something they've heard in spiritual circles. What exactly are these Indigos? Why are they supposedly so important to this shift?
Right. The source explains that Indigos is basically simply a phrase that says that there is a new consciousness of human being.
Okay, so not a specific group, like a race or nationality.
No, not at all. It's not a secret club either. It's more a way to describe a generation that embodies a different kind of energetic blueprint, maybe, a different way of seeing and being in the world.
How are they different?
Well, they're often described as having heightened intuition, a really strong innate sense of justice, a deep intolerance for dishonesty or manipulation, and a natural ability for creative problem solving. They often feel different or kind of out of place in traditional systems because their core values just don't mesh with the status quo.
So they inherently want truth, integrity, connection.
That's the idea, yeah.
And are they new? Did they just appear?
Not exactly. The source gives a timeline. It says these individuals started some time ago, more than a generation, so it's been building.
Oh, okay.
But the crucial part is the majority of the ones being born into this planet happened approximately a generation ago when they were coming in on a regular basis.
So we're talking about a large group who are now reaching adulthood.
Exactly. Entering the workforce, starting to take their place in society now.
And the source says they had an impact even when younger.
Yeah, it highlights how you could see how they changed the families they were in or what they faced when they came up against dysfunction.
Like a kid who just won't play the usual power games.
Yeah.
Or calls out hypocrisy.
Honestly, forcing the family maybe to confront its own issues or old beliefs, their very presence could act as a kind of catalyst.
Okay.
And now, over 25 years later, these are the people who are supposedly starting to make differences on a bigger scale. But here's the absolute game changer. The critical new piece that sets their potential apart from all those previous generations of young idealists.
The thing that breaks the cycle of absorption.
Yes.
And that game changer. It's something we use every single day, isn't it?
It is. Mass media, social mass media.
Social media, of course.
It's a tool that no previous generation had access to when they were trying to make big changes. It's not just the reach, it's a whole new way of communicating.
Right. Think about the scale now compared to the 60s. Back then, to reach lots of people, you needed newspapers, radio, TV, all controlled by gatekeepers, needing big resources.
Very different now.
Totally different. Now, one young person can talk to millions. That's not hyperbole. It's reality for so many creators, influencers, activists on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, whatever the platform is.
I can just bypass the old filters and hierarchies.
Completely. The barriers are just gone.
Yeah.
The source talks about the incredible access. If any young person is interested in hearing something, they can get it. And they can get it right where they are, no matter where they are.
Instantly.
And they can get it on their smartphones. Some even can get it on their watches. This constant, instant access to information, to different views, to a global network, it just changes the whole game for collective action and spreading ideas.
Allows for this rapid, organic forming of consensus, of shared purpose that was impossible before. So this creates a new kind of communication, one that's very attractive and understood by the young. It builds this sense of global community, shared goals that goes beyond borders or cultures.
Okay.
And this is the core of the analysis here. The source is basically saying the result of this combination, this new indigo consciousness, plus these amazing communication tools, is the tipping point for the first time in human history.
Yeah.
It's where the youngsters are going to make a difference and going to start changing the actual systems. This is the fundamental shift. The old absorption pattern finally breaks, not by force, but by this new way of collective, compassionate influence.
An infiltration of consciousness, not a demolition.
Exactly.
Okay, so this new communication, this massive reach, that's the how. But what do these indigos actually talk about? What's their message? How is it different from just railing against the system like in the past?
Good question. Because it's not just about protest. The source suggests they're questioning much deeper things, shifting the focus to what could be. The source describes their focus as not just rebelling against things or even demanding specific policy changes necessarily. It's more about getting others interested in really core foundational concepts.
Like what?
Things like integrity, honesty, kindness, and compassion, and maybe even some spiritual information.
Huh, that's different. Not just anger, but promoting positive values.
Exactly. It's a huge shift from just opposing something. It's about actively promoting and building around a set of higher, more, altruistic values. They're essentially modeling a new way to be, making the old ways look not just wrong, but kind of less evolved, less intelligent, maybe.
And that's what's so striking, especially for young people. The usual story is rebellion, fighting injustice. But the source says they're asking the main questions. Why are you here? Why do we treat each other like we do? What's next? What can we do?
Yeah, the big ones.
These are deep existential questions, not just political complaints. It's a fundamental push to reevaluate how we interact, our purpose, how we organize ourselves for everyone's benefit.
They're looking for meaning, purpose, real connection. And they expect systems to reflect that.
Okay.
And this philosophical grounding, this focus on higher values, is supposedly what allows them to imagine and then start creating truly compassionate systems.
Back to the systems.
Yeah. The source directly asks us to picture this. Can you imagine starting another kind of banking system that had compassion? And what would happen then with the ones that didn't?
Right. Challenging that core belief that these big institutions, banking, schools, government, are just too big, too entrenched to ever really change.
Mm-hmm.
And you might be thinking, like the source says, well, that's naive. They're too big to challenge. Or government, it's been around forever. You can't change that. Too bureaucratic, too gridlocked.
Totally natural reactions. It feels like moving mountains.
Yeah.
But the source just flatly counters that. No, they're not. And yes, you can.
Okay, but how? If not by tearing them down.
The key difference is the method. It emphasizes you don't need that direct confrontational overthrow. It says, you don't have to pull it down, dear ones. You simply put compassion into it. And those who elect the leaders do the rest.
Put compassion into it. What's that look like practically?
Well, think about banking again. Compassion might mean prioritizing community well-being over just pure profit, offering real financial literacy support, backing sustainable local businesses, having genuinely supportive hardship programs instead of just punitive fees.
Okay, so changing the core values driving the decisions.
Exactly. Or think about schools valuing emotional intelligence, critical thinking, empathy, collaboration, just as much as test scores.
Fostering different qualities.
All right. It's about shifting the underlying values, which then ripples out into systemic change through the choices people make within those systems, or how they choose to interact with new alternative systems that pop up.
So it's a gentle, persistent reorientation, not a violent revolution?
That's the idea, an evolution driven by values.
Okay. And this isn't just a hope for the future.
Apparently not. The source reinforces that you are seeing the beginning of a tipping point right now. It urges us to watch for this new ways of doing things that never changed before, supposedly happening already, maybe in subtle ways.
Under our noses.
That's right. The source is clear. This isn't some future prophecy we just wait for. It uses this active metaphor. The snowball is rolling down the hill because it's already starting to make itself known and seen on this planet.
So it has momentum already.
Yes. It's an ongoing process, building speed. The message is pretty direct. The Indigos are here. They're going to make a difference. And they're going to make a difference by changing the systems that you always thought could never change or would never change.
Wow. So those big, seemingly immovable systems, banking, schooling, government, are finally facing a different kind of influence.
A new kind of energetic, conscious influence, not through force, but through the pull of these higher values.
And the vision it paints is, well, it's compelling. Hopeful, maybe. A more compassionate system within all things that you're part of. It's coming, dear ones. Expect it. This is the tipping point. It's a profound thought that if these values, integrity, honesty, kindness, compassion, championed by this new consciousness, amplified by these new tools, are really infiltrating our foundations, then we are truly on the edge of something transformative.
An evolution in how we organize ourselves, moving towards something that maybe reflects our better nature more.
Yeah. So wrapping up this deep dive, we've really explored this unique view on how society might be evolving, not through the old disruptive revolutions, but driven by this Indigo generation, using these incredible communication tools. It's a vision of making old, broken systems obsolete by building new ones, or just fundamentally changing existing ones, infusing them with compassion and integrity, aiming for that more compassionate system for everyone.
Making the old ways just irrelevant because something better, more appealing, more effective emerges.
Exactly.
And it's really key to remember, as the source stressed, this isn't presented as some far-off dream we just hope for. It's framed as a process already happening. That snowball is already rolling, showing up in ways that might not hit the headlines, but are subtly reshaping things.
A deep consciousness shift influencing our external world.
That's the connection being made, yes.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. If this new consciousness, amplified by these tools, really is starting to infiltrate core systems, banking, schools, even local government with more compassion, more integrity, what's the very first, maybe tiny, almost unnoticeable shift you might see in your own daily life?
Good question.
How would you know that snowball is actually affecting your world? Maybe it's in how your local bank branch treats people, moving beyond just profit to, I don't know, genuine service. Or how community decisions get made, with maybe more real empathy for everyone involved, not just the loudest voices.
Yeah, not the grand gestures.
No, not the massive overhauls, but those subtle, everyday signs. The little hints that a more compassionate system might actually be starting to emerge right here, right now. What would that look like for you?